after rent. This was all he had left. By the end of the month, Malcolm had $184.11 to carry his daughter, his debt, and the rest of his life. The first time Malcolm Hayes realized he had started measuring his life in expiration dates was under the fluorescent lights of a 24-hour pharmacy in Phoenix. Not birthdays, not holidays, not vacations, expiration dates. Milk, bread, yogurt, his daughter's asthma medication. He stood in aisle 7 holding a generic inhaler box while 2 teenagers argued over energy drinks near the register. Malcolm barely heard them. His eyes stayed fixed on the small white sticker in the corner of the package. June 2027. His brain immediately translated it into numbers. 3 more rent increases. Another school year. Another insurance deductible. The automatic doors opened behind him, dragging warm desert air into the store. Malcolm suddenly realized he could not remember the last full day he had spent without calculating something. Gas, hours, groceries, interest, overtime, sleep. Even his daughter's breathing had become part of a monthly budget. And somehow, nobody around him looked panicked. That was the strangest part. The world kept moving like this was normal, like exhaustion was just adulthood now. He placed the inhaler into his basket beside frozen waffles, cough medicine, and a birthday card he still had not signed. Kiara was turning 11 tomorrow. He still did not know what to write. Love you. Sorry I'm always tired. The thought appeared so quickly, it scared him. By 6:30 the next morning, the freeway looked like a moving wound. Thousands of cars crawled toward office buildings and warehouses, while morning radio hosts joked about celebrity divorces and grocery prices. Malcolm drove with one hand on the wheel and the other pressing against the ache in his shoulder. His phone vibrated in the cup holder. Work group chat. Need volunteers for Saturday. Credit card payment due tomorrow. Kiara's school portal. Field trip payment overdue. He turned the screen face down. Around him, everyone looked professionally exhausted. Nobody looked angry anymore, just depleted. As if adulthood had quietly become administrative suffering. Malcolm worked as a claims processor for a health insurance company. 8 years earlier, he thought the job was temporary. Now he spent his days reviewing medical appeals from strangers whose lives were collapsing through PDFs. Denied surgery, rejected medication, out-of-network emergencies. Every day, people begged for help in carefully worded forms. Every day, Malcolm clicked drop-down menus. At 10:30, his supervisor Rochelle appeared at his cubicle. You still good for Saturday? Not hello, not how are you, just labor allocation. Malcolm thought of the aquarium tickets he had promised Kiara. The jellyfish room was her favorite. I'll let you know, he said. Need an answer by noon. When she walked away, Malcolm stared at the unsigned birthday card in his desk drawer. He had brought it to work, intending to write something meaningful during lunch. At noon, he agreed to work Saturday. The card remained blank. After work, Malcolm sat in his parked car outside the apartment for 43 minutes. The engine was off. His forehead rested against the steering wheel. He checked his bank account. Rent withdrawal pending. Electric bill posted. Minimum payment processed. Remaining balance $184.11. He stared at the number until it stopped looking real. An unknown number called. This is Desert Valley Medical regarding your outstanding balance. He hung up. Then felt guilty, then angry, then tired for being angry. Upstairs, Chiara sat on the couch doing homework. "You forgot," she said quietly. "The field trip card. Teacher said today was the last day." $35. He had remembered yesterday. "I'm sorry." "It's okay." But it wasn't. He opened the refrigerator. Half a rotisserie chicken, expired spinach, almond milk, condiment bottles. Modern adulthood in cold lighting. That night, after Chiara fell asleep, Malcolm sat at the kitchen table searching for jobs he was no longer qualified for. Remote positions with hundreds of applicants. Entry-level roles requiring years of experience. At 1:12 a.m., he found himself staring at the aquarium website instead. He remembered Chiara at 6 years old, pressing both hands to the glass and whispering. They looked like floating feelings. Back then, he still had the energy to notice things like that. Now, even joy required scheduling. The birthday card sat beside his laptop, still blank. Saturday arrived after 4 hours of sleep. At 6:03 a.m., Rochelle texted, "Need you in by 9. System backlog." Chiara emerged wearing sneakers and quiet hope. Malcolm already knew what kind of memory this day would become. "Bad news," he said. Her shoulders dropped almost invisibly. Oh, that single sound hurt more than anger would have. "I'm sorry, Bug." "It's okay." Again, the phrase children used when they slowly stopped expecting things. He dropped her at his sister Dana's apartment and drove downtown. At work, he overheard co-workers discussing side hustles. One delivered groceries after shifts. Another sold plasma twice a week. Nobody reacted as if this were alarming. Just practical. By late afternoon, Malcolm's headache blurred the edges of his screen. His phone buzzed. A photo from Dana, Chiara at the aquarium, standing beside glowing blue jellyfish, smiling. Malcolm stared at the image until the screen dimmed. Then, unexpectedly, his eyes filled with tears. Not dramatic sobbing, just silent exhaustion leaking out through biology. He locked himself in a restroom stall because he suddenly could not handle fluorescent lights, emails, or another human voice asking for productivity. What frightened him most was not the sadness. It was how normal this had become. That night, after picking Chiara up, they stopped at a drive-thru burger place. Totals $27.84. Malcolm handed over his card, already bracing emotionally. Approved. The relief felt humiliating. As they ate in the car, Chiara looked out the window. Do adults ever stop being tired? The question landed softly, but it hit like falling concrete. Finally, Malcolm answered. I think adults just get used to carrying a lot. Chiara thought about this. That sounds sad. Because it was. At home, Chiara fell asleep on the couch beside him. The television flickered silently across the room. For once, no notifications arrived, no emails, no payment reminders, no calls. Just stillness. And inside that stillness, Malcolm realized how long it had been since life felt like living instead of maintaining. Maintaining employment. Maintaining payments. Maintaining functionality. He looked around the apartment, the dishes drying by the sink, Chiara's backpack near the door, the cheap furniture, the quiet. Tiny evidence of a life held together by exhaustion. Outside, the freeway hummed through the night. Endless motion, endless labor, endless people trying to afford another month of existence. For the first time in a long while, Malcolm admitted something terrifying. He was no longer afraid of failure. He was afraid this might be all life ever became. Then his eyes drifted to the kitchen table. The birthday card, still unsigned, blank, waiting. He sat there for a long time. Then, for the first time in weeks, Malcolm made a choice that was not about survival. He stood up, walked to the kitchen, opened the card. His hand trembled slightly as he picked up the pen. For several seconds, he could not think of anything perfect to say. Then, he stopped trying to be perfect. He wrote 4 simple words. "Love you. I'm trying." He read the sentence twice. No grand promise, no explanation, just the truth. He placed the card beside Kiara's backpack so she would see it in the morning. Then he returned to the couch and sat beside her. The apartment fell silent, and for the first time all week he did not reach for his phone. He just sat there, breathing, listening to his daughter sleep. Maybe tomorrow would still be difficult. Maybe the bills would still arrive. Maybe Monday morning would ask for more than he felt able to give. But tonight he had done one small thing that reminded him he was still here, still a father, still a person, still capable of choosing love, even while exhausted. And sometimes that tiny act of honesty is enough to keep a life from disappearing completely. Thank you for listening to Whispered Wealth. If this story felt painfully familiar, you are not alone. This channel is for the people quietly carrying modern life on exhausted shoulders, for the emotionally tired, for the overworked, for the ones trying to stay human inside a world that constantly demands productivity. If you connected with this story, subscribe to Whispered Wealth for more deeply emotional cinematic stories about modern adulthood, financial pressure, loneliness, burnout, and the hidden emotional lives people rarely talk about. And if this story reminded you of someone who has been carrying too much lately, share it with them. Sometimes people do not need advice. Sometimes they just need to feel understood. Until next time, take care of yourself gently.